Welcome back to the conversation. It's Adrienne Lawrence, and this time I have one of my TYT colleagues joining me. That is our national correspondent, Matt Sheffield. Thanks for joining us, Matt.
Hey, great to be here.
Yes, I know. So right before we hit that clock and kicked over to 2023, well, there were some revelations revealed, largely that former top Trump aide saying that Republicans thought lying about 2020 would help their careers. What was that about?
Yeah, well, it's so progressives have long thought, and it's been pretty obvious that Republicans are willing to lie about pretty much anything if it's advantageous to themselves. But this was in the January 6th Congressional Committee, Select Committee. They interviewed, of course, a bunch of people, and one of the people they interviewed was Alyssa Farah Griffin, who is Trump's former communications director. So she was in charge of everything that he said, and everybody else was ordered to say on his behalf. And she eventually decided, you know what, I don't like the guy, and then when he started concocting this whole lie about 2020, she decided she was going to quit. And so she realized that a lot of people were like, okay, so it's obvious he lost. I've got to find another job here because I'm going to have to start planning for the future, right? I got to pay my rent, I got to, support my family, whatever. And so she put out the word to her staff, it's like, hey, if you want to shop your resume, please go ahead. I will help you. I promise I will help you get a job. And then the guy who is the personnel director in the Trump administration, he's like, if you are caught shopping your resume, you're going to be immediately fired. And so basically, in response to that, a lot of Trump people, according to her, decided, well, you know what, I'm just going to lie. I'm going to go along with this stuff. We know that Trump lost fair and square, but you know what? Hey, it's good for our career. And she singled out in particular Kayleigh McEnany, who was Trump's final press secretary. She called her a liar and an opportunist, and said that she was willing to do basically anything that it took to get herself cash. And she certainly did cash in. She's now the host of a co-host of Outnumbered on Fox News Channel right now.
Wow. So Griffin finally decided that it was not something she wanted to be a part of in terms of the Trump administration. But of course, that's after he lost. And then she decided to call everybody out.
Well, she decided to support those people who were wanting to quit and look for something in the future. And so, but there was so much intimidation there that people felt like that there was nothing that they could do. They couldn't tell the truth if they knew what was good for them. But that was basically the word was put out, and and some of them decided to go a little extra mile and lie a lot more. But like you don't see what's kind of notable about this story is that so Trump and Republicans, they lie all the time about everything. But here was a very high level Republican actually willing to admit, yeah, we lie if it's good for us, and we have no problem with it. So yeah, pretty notable.
Yeah, it is quite so. And especially those lies coming at the forefront even more and more, because not only did we see so many members of Trump's team, whether it's his legal team or those by his side, who have been now called to answer because of their lies about the 2020 presidential election, but then in seeing George Santos be advanced as a congressperson based on lies he told, it really seems to be something now very much associated with the Republican Party, these lies.
Oh, no question about it. I mean, and even now, Ronna McDaniel, who was one of the other people that was named by Alyssa Farah Griffin in her testimony, she said, Ronna McDaniel knows that Trump lost fair and square, that there was no fraud. And to this day, right now, she will not admit that in public. So it's just, yeah, deceit and lying about stuff is the cornerstone basically of the party, and certainly that reflects back to Donald Trump, but it was there before him as well. I think that's important to point out.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's always been a long-standing viewpoint of, if a politician's talking, they're a liar, and the thought of that most lawyers are liars, and then most lawyers become politicians, and so on and so forth. But it almost seems like the level of lies that have been coming out of the GOP within the last several years have just been completely and totally appalling, as though we've hit new depths of depravity almost.
Oh, yeah, I think that's true. Although, you can go back to the Bush administration, though, like they had their divisions over the Iraq War and whether they should tell the truth about what they actually knew about how poorly it was going. And there was a guy that infamously came out with this criticism of people. He said, "You people, you live in the reality-based community. And we don't have to do that. We will create our own reality." And that's basically what Donald Trump does every single day. Like he really thinks it's like the George Costanza theory of politics, that it's not a lie if you believe it. Except it actually is.
I just thought Trump was really good at, enforcing these principles of that whole the secret thought. This thought of as long as I believe it, it will come to fruition. But then when you kind of realize, no, he's just a manipulative, grifting liar. I think that's something that most of America needs to come to terms with. Even though it seems, or I would say that Griffin's revelation and sharing this information, being a top Trump aide, that logically, that should be persuasive for a number of these MAGA minions out here, but it probably won't necessarily make a dent, right?
Well, they probably won't even see it because, of course, Fox News isn't going to talk about this story because it makes one of their hosts look like a complete sociopath. But you know what, Adrian, you did actually make a point about the secret in Donald Trump. That's actually a point about him. There's something about him that a lot of people don't know, and that is that when Donald Trump was a kid, the guy who was the pastor of the church that his parents made him go to was named Norman Vincent Peale. And Norman Vincent Peale actually is sort of the grandfather of the secret philosophy. And so he had this idea, he literally wrote a book called The Power of Positive Thinking, and basically told people, if you imagine it, then it will happen. So it's really pretty incredible, actually, that there is actually a line there.
Yeah, that's actually, and it's somewhat terrifying in part, but yeah, wow, that is incredibly fascinating, without a doubt. Yes, and so now we're into 2023. We know that the January 6th committee is kaput, but let's talk a little bit about some of the things that they did on their way out the door. I know they definitely seem to be criticized for being soft on intelligence and law enforcement failures as it concerns, the attack on the US Capitol. Would you say that your reporting is finding things consistent with that?
Yeah, well, and it was something that, so there were staffers who were working for the committee, as they were progressing through their work, and they said to the press and anonymously in various other ways that they were concerned that the report was only going to be about Trump and all the stuff that he and his people did, which of course, obviously that is the most important aspect of it. But the reality is that in order for that to happen, there were a lot of other mistakes that other people made, including not taking the reports that they were getting. So the FBI was getting all kinds of reports about, hey, we can literally see these, right-wing extremist militia groups, white nationalists, Christian supremacists, violent, types talking about, hey, like literally after. So Trump gave a tweet where he said, "I need you guys to come to Washington to protest on January 6th. Be there. It's going to be wild." And literally within minutes of him doing that, there were some people on a website for Donald Trump super fans. They literally started talking about, how do we build a gallows? Does anyone know how to build a gallows? And it was not a joke. They actually meant it, and sure enough, somebody actually did. People showed up with the different, wood pieces and all the right hammers and nail stuff, and they built a gallows, and that was their intention, was to hang Mike Pence, and that was right. And the FBI was fed this information right from the get-go, and the DC Capitol Police, they also were given some of this information by people trying to get them to take this stuff seriously, and these are real problems, but the January 6th final report, the committee report, they didn't put any of this stuff in there about what had happened and how people had messed up. And one of the other things that was also kind of really unfortunate to note in the report also was that, so the guy who ended up who is the current House Sergeant at Arms. So that's like the military, like the police force of the House of Representatives. He told them, we would have taken this more seriously if these demonstrators were Black. And that wasn't in the report either. So like there were a lot of intelligence failures and law enforcement failures with all this stuff. There is just, and people need to know about it.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you why you thought law enforcement didn't take it seriously, with a caveat that my thought was that it's because, law enforcement is at least 70% white and male, and these individuals who were storming the Capitol very much mirrored them, and thus they did not see them as a threat. And so your added note there in terms of if they were Black, they would have taken it more seriously. That sounds very much aligned with already the premonition of so many of those out there who were wondering why law enforcement didn't act swifter and faster. Now, the fact that they omitted this from the report, why do you think Congress did not include it?
Well, from what we can understand, Liz Cheney, so there were 2 Republicans who were on the panel, and Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, and Liz Cheney was the co-chair of the panel, and it was her opinion that she wanted the report to only be about Trump and his cronies, and because she thought that it would be more powerful of an indictment against him if there was none of the other stuff in there, and so. They had different groups in the investigation team. So they had and they called them by colors, like gold team and blue team, et cetera. And basically she decided to just stuff all the stuff that the other teams did because she wanted to go after Trump. And look, and it fits her narrative. We have to remember this is a partisan Republican person, and so for her to say that there were other Republicans who made failures or did extreme things, or the intelligence. I mean, she's in love with the CIA, and FBI. So of course she doesn't want to put stuff in there that would be derogatory about them.
And that's unfortunate, because if she wanted to make it all about Trump, she could have added that in, because Trump is white supremacy. But then again, those are just my thoughts. And I want to thank you so much for joining us. That's Matt Sheffield, TYT National Correspondent. Thanks, Matt.
All right, thank you.